This is the Millennials in Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. We interview industry experts to unlock key information that will help young professionals break into the multifamily world in order to create long-term and short-term wealth. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and written review so we can reach more listeners.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Millennials in Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, John Stober, with my co-host, Fritz Ritter, and today our guest is Lee Yoder. Lee was a practicing physical therapist when he realized his true passion was building businesses. He took that passion and started his own company, Threefold Real Estate Investing, where he very quickly acquired several small apartment buildings. Today, we're going to learn more about his story and how he was able to learn this business and acquire deals so quickly. Lee Yoder, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials and Multifamily podcast. Could you give us and our listeners just a little bit more about yourself and your background, how you got started off in the business?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be on with you guys. I was working full time. I'm a physical therapist by trade. I was actually at the time that I really got interested in real estate. I was actually more in the office doing kind of the corporate side. So I was really climbing the corporate ladder. I actually wasn't doing any physical therapy anymore at all. I was the clinical director and really kind of climbing the corporate ladder and really enjoying that. It was challenging. It was exciting, much more so than physical therapy for me. And I started to realize, like, this is what I like doing. I like business. I like building. I was kind of building a division within this company that I was working for. It was a startup company. So that was exciting. So it was really great. But my wife and I had two young kids at the time, and she would not describe, those couple years as being great. It was really difficult for her. So someone talked to me about, or, a buddy of mine at the place kind of having some of the same feelings, showed me a book, and then I found Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like a lot of people do. And so it was like, okay, maybe there's a different way. Maybe my wife and I can both be happy. Like maybe I can do something exciting, fulfilling, challenging. Maybe I can build something, but also have some flexibility and be home a lot with the kids, right? Because to me, I'm a Christ follower. I put that first. I put my wife second, the kids third, and that all goes before any kind of business, anything else. But I wasn't really doing that at the time, and I really wanted to. So I ended up deciding to leave the corporate space and go back to doing physical therapy, specifically home health physical therapy. But I knew, hey, I'm going to get bored, because I'd done this before. I did it for a whole year, and I was bored out of my mind. I mean, my wife knew I wasn't happy, so she actually encouraged me to get in on the corporate side. But then you kind of slip into that, and all of a sudden it's taking you away, and you can't control your time on the corporate side, right? So it was like, well, let's go back into home health, where I'm going to be bored, but I'm going to supplement it with this side hustle of real estate. So that's kind of why and how I jumped into real estate first.
So as you started to jump in, were there any challenges that you didn't think about when you're like, hey, I'm going to go do real estate, and then they just kind of hit you like a ton of bricks that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to convince my wife. She's very conservative. I'm not. I'm a gambler, a risk taker. So that there was some friction there because it is a little risky. I mean, you're going to go buy a second house. I mean, for some people that never grew up like that, neither of us did. So to her and really her entire family, that just seemed crazy. You own one house at a time. That's what you do. So there was a little bit of that. And then probably just we started with a flip. Okay. And probably finding the team, whatever that means, whatever you're doing in real estate. For a flip, it's finding contractors. And that was more difficult than I thought, because it's easy to find really good contractors, but they cost way too much. It's easy to find some cheap people, but you probably can't depend on them very much. So yeah, putting the team together was probably more difficult than I thought.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah, I think everybody has. Yeah,
definitely been there. I was going to ask you, why did you stray away from flipping and get into multifamily?
Well, okay. So the first flip, I bought a house that no other good flipper would buy. Ended up putting $70,000 into it. The basement was leaking. Okay. That's the one thing, everybody runs from, right? Like if the basement's leaking, that's what you don't buy. But I did put like $12,000 in the basement, with those beams on the walls and redid the trim system. So we did it up right, and it worked out. And we made good money. I mean, I'll just say off the first one, I think we made like $30,000. So we were thrilled with that. I mean, honestly, my wife thought we were going to lose money. She thought we were going to lose everything. So financially, we did very well. I mean, this was our first one. She kept saying, I'm fine if we break even. I just want to break even. So financially, it was much better than she expected, probably even a little bit better than I expected. But it took a lot of my time. I mean, we got to a point, it took us 9 months to do it. I kind of kept track because I just want to know, I put in well over 500 hours of my own time during that 9 months. And I had a full-time job. Okay. So I had some flexibility. I was back, like I said, doing home health physical therapy, probably working like 35 hours a week. So not, but on top of that, now I'm getting really busy. And toward the end, like the last 3 months, it's like, Lee, if we want to have this done May 1st, like you say, because that's, a good time to sell, look at all the stuff we have left. Like you need to be out there every night and every weekend. And so that's basically what I did. And again, so it was like I was right back in the corporate world, right? So, again, it was, I wasn't able to control my time. And we have 2 young kids at home. So she's like, this is no better. You said you were going to leave the corporate world, do the physical therapy and do real estate on the side because you could control it and it was going to be this great thing. So I kept telling people during this flip, I'm like, I have to show my wife that real estate makes money because she's so nervous about it. She thinks we're going to lose money. So this first deal has to make money. And we totally did that. But unfortunately, I also proved to my wife that real estate will consume your time and you won't be able to control it. And it'll be just like being back in the corporate world. So, you can flip better than that. Okay. There's plenty of guys, you can put some systems in place. This was my first try, but that was, right away. And if you're listening to podcasts, right, like you hear a lot of guys say stuff like that, like I was flipping or, even just owning single families, like it's great. Like you can make good money, but you're really creating for yourself just another job. And that was my exact experience. So I had already known that eventually I wanted to get into the multifamily space. I guess I kind of, felt like everybody else, not everybody else, but a lot of people were like, well, I want to get into that, but I have to do this first. And I felt like that. So I knew I wanted to kind of start small, do some single family stuff, kind of ease my way in. So that's what I did. But after that experience, it was like, yeah, this is like kind of being back in corporate. It's just another job on top of the job I already have. So I knew I wanted to go multifamily from there.
So as you got into multifamily, did you find that it was similar and that it's still taking up a ton of your time and maybe you just enjoyed it more, or did you actually start to see the advantages of the scalability and, the return on your time? Yeah.
Well, I guess I could have kept that flip that we did and saw some passive income. But next I bought a duplex. And that flip we basically flipped that. It was vacant. I got rid of the one tenant. They moved out willingly. So it was vacant, flipped that. Much easier flip. We had some cushion now, so I did hire out more of the work. It wasn't nearly as bad of a property. There's no basement, brick, much easier property. Didn't need windows. So the flip was much easier. And then I got tenants in there. And I actually managed it myself. It was in a good area where I live. So it was, in our town. And we got to see passive income. So yeah, once we flipped it and seeing that passive income, now it's not a lot, but it was, nothing's completely passive, but it was pretty passive. I mean, because I had rehabbed the whole thing, once the tenants move in, it's not like they're calling me with stuff all the time because everything was new. There was still a little bit of stuff here and there. And I learned then, and I kind of already knew, like, I didn't really want to manage tenants. Like, that's not my goal. I don't want to be a property manager. I want to be an asset manager. But yeah, that was, very different than a flip. The flip, you're working really, really hard. You make a good amount of money, hopefully, but then it's done and you're making nothing. With this, we put some money into it. And then we got to see what passive income looked like. So that was the difference there.
How did finally, like, earning some sort of passive income, how did that change your mindset and just any beliefs that you may have held? Yeah, well, it was certainly a proof of concept. I mean, just, my wife and calculating all the things that could go wrong. I mean, certainly, again, like I said, the flip process was much better. So she's like, okay, we can flip and real estate can be easier than what it was the first time. That was just a really bad experience, but this was a much better experience. And then with the passive income, just seeing that, like, hey, income does equal more than expenses, if you do it right. Right. And so she was getting to see that. I was getting to see that, like, okay, this is how this is supposed to work. Every month we are getting more from our residents than what we are paying in our mortgage, taxes, insurance, and any other, maintenance expenses and stuff like that. They were paying their own utilities. Or I guess I was paying water and trash, stuff like that. So we just got to see, like, this is how income equals more than expenses, and you get to pocket some money every month. And you say you sold that property?
Yeah, I did end up selling that. My goal is always, like I said, I don't want to manage my own properties. I kind of felt like if I and I want to, someday own 1,000 units. So I don't want to own a bunch of duplexes. I felt like getting a bunch of little ones, it doesn't make as much sense to have somebody manage it for you. So the goal was always to go bigger. So I had a chance to sell that and make a good bit of money on it. I'm sure I got taxed on it, but, make some money and then, move toward the bigger stuff. So I did that. I didn't even own that for a year.
Wow. Nice turnaround. So what came after the duplex then? Was that your first 5+ unit property?
Yeah, absolutely. So after that, actually, before I even sold it, I had joined the Cincinnati RIA. And through that, they have an apartment syndication focus group led by a guy named Mark Hutton. I started going to that the winter, let's call it 2018, and I ended up selling the duplex in spring or May of 2019. So I had already started getting some good training for that. I mean, I listened to a ton of podcasts, read a ton of books even before that. But that's when I, sitting down with someone and putting up some underwriting on the screen and going over properties. I'm like, okay, now like I'm getting to level 201 or something of multifamily, right? Like starting to learn more. It's making more sense. So I just started jumping online, just doing the lazy stuff of just jumping on LoopNet, jumping on Crexy and looking at properties, mostly local, but stretching a little bit. And I would underwrite them and then send them to Mark. He's very generous with his time. He really likes teaching people. So I would say, hey, here's what I'm getting off this. Like, am I doing this right? And, I might say, yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'd call the broker, talk to him a little bit about it. Most of the properties that I was interested in would already be under contract. Like if I found one that made sense, it's like, yeah, somebody else already found it. It's gone. Like, you're not quick enough. So, I just kept doing that until I, found a property basically that was pretty close to me, a 16 unit that was sitting on LoopNet for a long time and it was overpriced. So I just underwrote it, like I said, using an underwriting tool and came up with, like Mark and anybody will say, well, if it doesn't make sense at this number, what number doesn't make it sense at? So get that number in there and then that's your offer price and just go ahead and offer that. So that's what I ended up doing on that 16 unit was said, well, here's what it's worth to me. Would you accept this? You've had it on online for over a year, so maybe you will. And I did that and they ended up accepting that offer.
So why do you think that property hadn't sold? Was it just because the price was too high, or do you think there were some things that other investors may have been missing that you saw in the property?
Yeah, I think a lot of investors would have just ruled it out pretty quickly because it's outside of Dayton. Dayton, Ohio is not a great market by any stretch. And it's outside of Dayton. So Southern Dayton actually is a pretty good area. Actually, kind of south of Dayton and north of Dayton is pretty good. Everything in Dayton is not so great. So this was south of Dayton, but even more south of that. So it actually it sits like in a cornfield. Okay, so you're not walking anywhere. It's you're not walking to Kroger. I mean, this is so it's not in in a city, and it's an old school. It actually used to be a school, and then somebody turned it into a nursing home. So when they turned it into a nursing home, I mean, as you can imagine with the regulations, they did a really good job. I mean, they dropped the ceilings, all new, like a ton of new electric, new plumbing, and they basically turned every classroom into 2 units for a nursing home. And then then it was easy to turn it into an apartment whenever they did that. So that's a weird property. I mean, it still had a cafeteria in it, still had a kitchen. The whole building is on there's 4 furnaces in the basement and they heat the entire building. So each unit has a thermostat where they can call for heat or not, but you're heating the entire building and all utilities are paid by the landlord because you just really can't separate it. So I think a few things like that, just a lot of people, in a rural area, nope, I don't want that. It used to be a school building. That's weird. I don't want that. Too much common areas, right? I don't want that. And landlords paying for all utilities. I don't want that. So, I mean, maybe like the flip I did where I bought the flip that no good flipper would do. Maybe I just bought the multifamily that no good multifamily buyer would buy. But for those reasons, I think a lot of guys just cross it off before even really looking at it.
Yeah. So
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Okay. I was going to say, so what was your strategy going into that 16 unit?
Well, I just felt like, the price offered. So they were, this is a 16 unit. Now, 12 of them are 1 beds and 4 of them are studios. Okay. So they're, smaller units and the landlord's paying for all utilities, but it was listed for $440 and I offered $350. Okay. So my strategy was like, I'm getting this for dirt, what felt like dirt cheap to me. So so far my strategy, what makes me feel comfortable is buying properties that need a lot of work. Cause I just feel like, if you buy them for that price, I mean, there's guys out there now, I feel like selling properties that need a lot of work and it's like they're selling them like the work's already been done. But if you can get it at that price, then I just felt like I had so much cushion. I mean, it was really like I could basically break even if I had like 12 units rented because of the price I was coming in at, and even like what rents already were at. So I just felt like there was so much cushion. But then my strategy was just to come in with plenty of capital to really rehab everything. And really, I mean, it's a smaller property, but I felt like I'm prepared to rehab every unit. If we're able to do that, if people want to move around or people move out, rehab all the common areas, get the landscape, just really get the entire property cleaned up and kind of turn the entire property. That was really our strategy with that one.
Did you do anything creative with those common areas like the cafeteria?
We did finally. I mean, we got them cleaned up, and we were just like racking our brain as to what to do. I mean, we were even looking at maybe doing some self-storage in there because there is a separate entrance kind of in through the back. So I thought maybe we could like put some, storage units in here because it was climate controlled. So, I mean, maybe there's actually an extra building. Maybe we end up doing something like that. But eventually, actually, a church rented it out. So now we've got a church that meets in there every week. They pay $20 an hour, and they have it 3 hours every Sunday. So they're paying $60 a week. So 240. I mean, you figure there's some months with 5 weeks. So they're paying $250, $260 a month for that space, and we're really not doing much to it. I mean, we do clean it, but just when we clean the hallways and the rest of the common areas. So we're making a little bit of money on that with that church in there.
So you said that you're kind of doing the hard work, going on Crexi, LoopNet, just doing all that like random underwriting that everyone says you should do. How critical was that to your development as a multifamily investor?
Yeah, I think really critical because, it's not even like I was writing stuff down and it's hard to even quantify, but like just in my head, because I'd underwritten so many deals, I knew what a good deal looked like, right? Like I understood, price per unit. I understood, what a cap rate, really looks like, but then, okay, but this property is in this area. So that's, maybe a cap rate of this isn't as good in that area. Just like all the little nuances of what makes a good deal. I mean, you just start to understand that. And, when you underwrite a deal and you go, man, I think I got it. I think this is a really good deal. And you call the broker and they're like, yeah, man, I already have 10 offers. I mean, as frustrating as that is, it's kind of like, okay, I guess right on that one. Like that is a good deal. I mean, they already have 10 offers, right? So you do that enough times and then, you call on one and they don't have any offers and it's been sitting for a year and you're like, okay, I thought this was overpriced. I thought I needed to get this for less. So you can really build some confidence, even just doing that. And as frustrating as it is, if you're doing that, you really are going to build some confidence and start to feel like, I know how to pick out a good deal. I mean, that's literally between raising money and finding deals. That's what apartment syndication is, right? So just by doing that, I felt like I was really honing my skill. And that, to me, that's the skill that the sponsor brings to the table is to finding good deals. So I really felt like I was honing that skill by doing that.
And could you talk about your underwriting more with this 16 unit? What stood out to you on it that was like, this is a good deal at this price?
Yeah, well, at 350, just running the numbers, like I said, even with the rents right where they were, I mean, they had 3 units vacant, and those 3 units were vacant because they weren't ready to be rented, not because they couldn't get renters in there. They had some storm damage at one point, damaged 3 units, and so they were having a tenant manage the whole property. Okay, so they had one resident managing the property, and it was also his job to turn the units. The guy had a full-time job. He's not a lazy guy. He had a full-time job, and they wanted him to turn the units on the side, and all they're giving him is free rent. Okay, it was not worth his time. So I knew, like, okay, if I just go in with enough capital to turn these 3 units and just keep everybody else happy, even at their rent, I mean, the numbers made sense, just like it was. Like there wasn't much to be done. It was a mess. A resident's managing it. They're not even collecting rent fully from everybody. So it really, I knew like the numbers worked on just getting everybody there to pay rent. Like we could literally almost break even with just the 13 that were there paying what they were. We didn't even have to raise rent. And then if I can just get these, come up with enough capital to turn these 3 units, now I'm getting them rented out. That's all profit. And then let alone if I start raising rents, more profit on top of that.
With a small property like that, were you really analyzing things like the exit cap rate and your internal rate of return, like those metrics that you look at when you're exiting, or were you just saying, hey, it's small, I'm probably going to hold on this for a while, I'm just looking at it for cash flow?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I didn't get too much into exit cap rate. Although, yeah, I definitely was looking at like, okay, if I could raise rents by this much, if I can have it full, if I can control expenses a little bit and get professional management in, things like that, what do I think it can look like? And just, I would just kind of like in an area like that, to me, it just seemed like even then and even now, I think like 8%. If I can say I'm going to sell it at an 8 cap, I felt like somebody's going to buy it at an 8 cap, right? In today's market, like, yes, it's a secondary, maybe even a tertiary market, but a property that's professionally managed that had as much done to it as what we did. I felt like that's a very realistic exit cap. So yeah, I was already looking at that going, 'cause I do want to hold properties. I don't want to just be a flipper. But you got to look at, your exit. I mean, that's where, some wealth can really be created.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was definitely already looking at that.
And you just think about it, if interest rates are like 3-4% and
I know.
you have it operating above an 8 cap, I mean, that is net cash flow on paper.
Yes.
And then so looking for properties on LoopNet and on the NMLS, has that become like one of your main strategies for finding deals? Just find stuff that's been sitting for a while and then offering your number?
Well, so I bought all three of my small multifamilies last like August, October, and then November.
Mhm.
Okay. And I've found nothing since. Now, because I was, working on those so much and we were doing a lot, I mean, two of them, so the 16 unit had 3 vacancies, but we did all the common areas and did a ton of work to that. And then the 10 unit that we bought was 50% vacant, and then someone moved out pretty quickly. So we rehabbed 6 units. We actually still have 2 to go. So I was doing a lot with that, so I wasn't looking as much, but I would say no, that has not been a good strategy really since then. And maybe it was just a blessing, that God provided me with to even find those. What I think it is, going back to what you said, John, is like it developed my skills as an underwriter. So I think it's been great for that. And then I think, I've heard other guys say this before, and I would totally agree with it. It just call on those properties, and that's a good way to develop relationships with the brokers. So I think it's those two things. I think everybody should be on underwriting deals to get good at that, and then call the broker, maybe go look at it. Hey, broker, here's why it doesn't make sense. Here's more of what I'm looking for. Now you're establishing a relationship with the brokers that maybe will bring you an actual good deal.
Right. And if you're new, just getting started in the business, like asset management, construction management, that just takes experience. But
Right.
anyone can go on LoopNet or Correctseat, pick up an underwriting
Right.
model, and just start practicing and developing that skill.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then what I would say, John, to those other two pieces, I think everybody should use third-party management when you're getting started, unless maybe you have a partner, maybe one of you guys has experience in that area and that's why you partnered up and one of you does that. But for me, it was just me. I was just investing with family and friends' money, and having a good property manager on my team took care of those things to some degree. Like when I need quotes, they get me 3 quotes from 3, good professionals to perform that task or whatever. And they, then manage the property obviously for me. So that can really help out with some of those areas that you aren't experienced in.
Right. And so are you primarily looking in like that corridor between Dayton and Cincinnati right now, or have you started to expand into other markets?
Yeah, right now I'm still, that's what's probably realistic for me right now, is to look in those areas. But yeah, I can't help but look in other areas. So I am looking in other areas. I would definitely only buy a bigger property outside of my area, because to me, it makes more sense to build a team in, Indianapolis if I find an 80 unit versus I'm not going to go to Indianapolis for a 12 unit, right? It just, so yeah, if I buy outside of Cincinnati, Dayton, anywhere around this area, then I would go for a bigger one. And I am trying to do that.
Are you struggling to understand how to underwrite multifamily properties? Hi, I'm John Stober, and I completely understand your problem. I thought underwriting would come naturally to me due to my background in finance and accounting, but I quickly found out that there aren't a lot of resources that cover this subject. I had no idea whether what I was doing was right, wrong, or just original. I don't want you to have to pick up little nuggets here and there like I did. So I wrote an ebook called How to Analyze Big Apartment Buildings and Make Them Feel Small that puts together all the pieces of the puzzle. We're also giving away a deal analyzer with the ebook, and they're both completely free. Don't wait as long as I did to start chasing financial freedom. Go to bit.ly/John bit.ly/underwriting ebook and get your free copy today.
That transitions perfectly into my next question. I wanted to ask, when you're looking at smaller properties in, your own backyard versus when you're looking for that 80 unit in Indianapolis, how does forming the team, how is it different for each market and each size of property?
Well, I think what I'm finding out, the biggest difference for me right now that we're trying to work with, and I did finally get a partner that it's funny, I used to work with at that company where I was, kind of climbing the corporate ladder. He was too. He got disenchanted with it too and walked away. And we both basically left at the same time. And now we're kind of coming back together. And he's working on this with me. And what he's really helped me do, and I'm kind of leading him through it because I've got the multifamily experience. He's just got some good experience in building teams and building processes and systems. But that's what I'm kind of leading him and he's helping me do, is actually set up processes and systems, because, going to just literally in all these deals, it's me and one or two other people, one or two other parties. And they bring the money. Sometimes I bring some, and we just do a simple LLC. Buying, 60, 100 unit property, you're not going to be doing that. You're going to have to bring in, more money. You're going to have to go outside of family and friends. So I think that's going to be the biggest difference for me. And that's what we're kind of setting up. We've got a CRM that we're going to work through now. We're going to start getting, some weekly emails going out. We've got a list of people who we've talked with, collecting the emails. Now we've got an email list, right? And so we're sending out stuff and trying to get a team together that way. So I think that's a big difference. It's going to take a bigger team. It's going to take more investors to raise the kind of money you need to take down a property like that. I hope a lot of it is similar, just bigger numbers as far as the management. I mean, like I said, I have no interest, at least at this point, in managing a property. So if I would go to Indianapolis, my biggest hurdle and what I would spend the most time on is just finding the best property management company or the best and most affordable, right? Because if I can nail that, then I'm going to feel so much more comfortable because it's them that's going to be doing a lot of the work. And then I just have to make sure they're doing it, right? I have to make sure we buy right, but then what's next? Manage right. And that's not going to be me doing it, but I have to make sure they do that. So yeah, there's a lot more, I think, in setting up systems and processes to bring on enough investors to take down a deal. But then I think it's just focusing on finding the right property manager and make sure they take care of the property.
So how a lot of people are like, oh, I wish I had just bought a 300 unit for my first property.
Yeah.
Even though, they started with a 20 unit and then they scaled up. Now that you're starting to maybe look for some of these larger properties and it takes a lot more capital to raise, do you feel the same way? You wish you had just started bigger, or do you think that these smaller properties that you've bought has prepared you well and going to make the equity raising piece a lot more manageable?
Yeah, the latter for sure. Yeah, if you find a team, maybe they've done some of that, or I don't know, maybe you just have other skills and you have such a network that trusts you and you can just raise the money right away. Okay, maybe. But yeah, the fact that I can go to people and show some experience, I think some experience is 100 times better than no experience. I feel like I have even more than just, I've only done 34 units, but the difference between 34 units and 0 is infinite to me. Yeah, right. I really think it is. It makes me feel more comfortable. I would be much more nervous going and buying a 100 unit property, for $6, $8, $10 million, and raising, $2, $3, $4 million from people. But now, it's still going to be scary doing it for the first time, but it's going to be okay, I've done this with less zeros. It's, it's the same process. And I'm going to people telling them about my experience, what we've done. So yeah, I like the guys. You guys probably listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of those guys even, say, hey, think big, but start small. I've heard a lot. And that's what I would say. And because too, just get started, even if you just get a duplex, just being able to talk about a duplex is, again, so much better than being able to talk about nothing. So I think if 100, or like you said, a 300 unit is going to be your first deal, what's it going to take you maybe 2 years to get that or something? But you could maybe go out and get a duplex in a few months. So I would say just get started.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of the people who are able to make that jump from 0 to 300, a lot of them come from either owning previous businesses, very high paying W-2 positions.
Yeah.
They have lots of money and they have a skill set they've developed over years and decades of their career that allows them to add value to some experienced operator. And they're not buying it themselves. They're partnering up with someone who's experienced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, I agree. It's much easier just to start out, buying something small, manageable, and then learning along the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Mhm. So what do you think is next for you, Lee?
Well, what I hope is next is, like I said, building out some systems and processes with a partner of mine and starting to build a list of investors so that we are ready to raise a few $1,000,000, and then finding a good property that's reasonably priced. I don't want to say, I wouldn't do the smaller properties. So like, I'm definitely still looking in my area. Like I said, I wouldn't buy a 12 unit in Indianapolis or Columbus because, those are like hour and a half, 2 hour drive from me, but I would do it again in this area. So, and those to me, I do treat those a little bit more like a flip. I mean, some people would treat, multifamily as a flip no matter what. And it's just, I've heard some people talk about it's just a long-term flip. And maybe that flip is actually refinancing it after 5 years. But really, a lot of guys look at it as you're going to make, some decent cash flow maybe, but the sponsors probably don't make that much until that 3-5 year mark where you can refinance or sell. And that's when you really create wealth. So I could see myself doing that on some small properties with, again, just a small group of people, just family and friends that want to keep doing it with me, and something I can manage. And I've found that with that there are some better returns. It's just small. I mean, it's like driving a small boat, really fast and doing some quick things with it, make some good money. Whereas, the big property, you're driving a ship and it takes a long time to get going. But I mean, you can really move some capital with that. So I'd like to kind of keep doing the small stuff here locally, but then building a team, building investors. And I'm hoping this fall, some of the guys I listen to, are saying that we're going to start seeing some deals again, maybe this winter and into next spring. Maybe the foreclosures tick up, and I don't wish that on people, but I do hope things, come back to reality and we can start seeing some deals, and maybe I could actually take down a bigger one.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, I hope that starts happening too. That not wishing any ill will on people, but how are you preparing for, that potential opportunity?
Yeah, well, the main way is like I said, just building up a list of people that are interested in investing with us. So, like I said, what we're going to start doing, that I've seen other guys do that I look up to is you got to get emails out to those people. You got to develop a relationship, but you've got to prepare them. I feel like it's kind of a two-step process. One, get these people to believe in multifamily investing. So get these people to say, this makes sense. I mean, again, this is a very foreign concept to, 99% of people buying anything more than their house and investing in anything outside of a 401k. So getting this list of people that we have that know us to believe, okay, yeah, multifamily investing makes sense. I want to invest in an apartment building. And then get them to say, and I want to do it with Lee and, threefold property. So, or threefold real estate investing. So if they believe those two things, maybe that's over the next few months. So then come this winter, come next spring, hopefully some of those people are like, hey, come on, man. Like I believe in multifamily investing. I believe in your team. I want to invest. So I hope to have a group of people that, that their money's burning a hole in their pocket and they're just waiting for me to find a deal. So when I find a deal, that part of it's ready to go, the money part of it.
So would you say most of your time is spent on acquisitions or raising capital now?
I would say right now I'm really trying to spend more of my time on acquisitions just because I've spent a lot of my time on raising capital, and I do feel like that's going pretty well. And my partner is coming on and handling a little bit more of that as far as getting the emails out and start setting up some of that stuff. So we already do feel like, hey, I think we could take down certainly like, I feel like maybe a next step would be like between 40 and 100 units. And I think we feel like we could at least do one. Like we could go and get the capital. We could raise $1 million to $2 million. Not for sure. I mean, it would still be a little bit scary, but I think we could do it. So I've really started to focus here lately. And this has maybe just been in the past few weeks of calling brokers, calling on deals and doing more of that, because it seems like that's the missing piece. That's the hardest part, is finding the deal.
So Lee, like we're big believers of email marketing too. I think a lot of people, when they're starting out though, they do just say, we're going to start off with friends and family, and they don't build that list. And it's overwhelming. It's like, how do I develop a list of 1,000 people that I've never met? Could you talk about, or maybe give some hints and insights as to, how you built that list and what types of emails you're sending out to them?
Yeah, so we are just getting this started. So this is a live look in and how we're trying to do it. But some of it is my partner and I, like I said, we used to work for a startup in the corporate world, and it got pretty big. So we're even some of those contacts, those people that are high net worth individuals. But as I explained the job to you, they're not going to have time to invest on the side. So they're going to have capital for sure, because this company paid us very well, but they're not going to have time. So those are prime people. It is still some family and friends, but it's like, some friends that I haven't talked to for a really long time. And
Right.
for me, I'm not a social media guy at all, but I didn't have a Facebook account. I don't know, 10, 12 years. And I just got one just for my business. When I set it up, I made my name threefold Yoder, because I didn't want people to find me. And I'm like, this is stupid. I'm getting on here so that people will find me and find the business. So I, switched my name to Lee Yoder and put threefold in the background or whatever. And I've seen the power of social media. I mean, I've seen just all I do on my page is just post. I do a podcast, like you guys, Threefold Real Estate Investing. And I posted about one property, and I just see the attention it gets. I'm doing that on LinkedIn as well, and seeing some attention focus. I mean, so on LinkedIn, I've noticed I'm connecting, and a lot of people I went to college with are seeing that on there. So that network that I graduated in 2009. So we're, 11 years ago, people I haven't even talked to, but guys I played football with, and now they're doing well, and in a good spot financially. So connecting with those people. So it's just building out the list kind of organically like that. And then, like I said, I do have a podcast. So I do, give my email, my website, and through the website that I built, there's a place you can sign up your email. Honestly, so far, that's been very little. I think I've gained 4 people through my website, but I will say, there are 4 people that are, pretty legitimately interested. So, those might be, of those 4 people, maybe 50% of them invest versus, the other 1,000 people I know, maybe it's, 1 or 2% of them. So anyway, yeah, so a lot of different things. I'm on Bigger Pockets a lot. That's how I connect with people a lot. And there's some people that have, liked something that I said, and then seem to kind of look me up. And then just because I have a website and because I have a podcast, it's kind of given me some credibility, I think. So I've had some people just reach out to me after seeing something and going, oh, yeah, this guy seems pretty legit. I like what he's saying, and reach out to me that way. So a lot of social media, still some friends and family, but a bigger network of friends and colleagues, and then through the podcast and website.
That's actually really funny that you said, older friends that you haven't spoken with for a while. We do the same thing. We're pretty active on social media. It just happened to me last week where I had a friend from college reach out, and he's like, hey, he's a former investment banker, so very savvy.
Yeah.
He's just like, yeah, would love to learn about investing in real estate and just diversifying. And it's just all because of social media.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have my one buddy reach out too, who owns 5 different companies. He's looking to get into real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm not a fan of it, but I mean, you can't deny it. It's powerful. It's the world we live in, for sure.
Absolutely. And so these people you're raising money from, I mean, they're not from the real estate industry. Mm-hmm. What are the most common questions and concerns that you hear from them?
Yeah, I think mostly they just want to kind of know how it works. So, hey, when I give you my money, what happens? Right. I think most people, honestly, people probably don't truly understand with the 401k, or if they go with their financial advisor, but they just kind of know hey, I'm giving you my money, you're going to keep it, but it's invested and I can get it back, but I'll pay a penalty or whatever. They just kind of understand that. So I think that's most of it is how does it work? How do I get my money back? When do you pay me? That I think is the first. I think I've heard several people say people are more afraid of losing their money than they are exciting about making extra money. So I think that's the first question is how am I not going to lose my money? What happens with it? Where does it go? Where do you keep it at? And, how likely am I to get it back? And then they want to know how's it work? So you guys just collect rent, and then the rent is how we make money. So I think it's first how are you going to keep my money safe, and where does it go? And how's the sausage made here? But then hey, how do you make me money? How's this work? I've lived in an apartment before, but I never thought about the fact that I was, somebody owned that apartment, and so they were getting my rent along with everybody else.
Right. One thing my dad asks me all the time, he's just what happens if I need the money back? He's like, if I buy a stock, I can sell it tomorrow. But he's if I buy real estate, what do I do? It's just it's a good question.
Locked in.
Yeah, but that is why we have very professional attorneys draft up the contracts. That's
Yeah.
what I always tell them.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, cool. So Lee, we're running up on time. I wanted to get to our section of the show that we call the Fast Five, and they're the same 5 questions we ask everyone who comes on the show. So if you're ready,
Sure.
we'll get right into it. All
Absolutely.
right. So question number 1, if you were to start all over again and you were in your early 20s, how would you do that?
Well, so in my early 20s, I was in PT school, and my wife and I rented the entire time. We didn't have kids. We've learned since then. I think we kind of knew it a little bit then, but we love doing rehab. Like I don't even know that we're done flipping. I think that's something my wife and I enjoy doing. So I hate that we wasted that time by renting. We would have we would have house hacked, right? Like we would have either house hacked by buying. I would have loved to have bought a duplex, triplex, quad, something like that, and had other people that were in PT school live with me and do the whole house hacking that way, and then keep that rental or sell it, or just have bought a dumpy house and rehabbed it while I was in grad school. So I hate that I wasted that time. So like a lot of guys saying, basically I just would have started earlier, and I probably would have started with the house hacking just to get my feet wet, and then come out. Then I would have felt like, okay, now I'm ready to jump into multifamily. So I could have got into multifamily, even earlier. But yeah, I would suggest if you don't have kids, I don't know why you wouldn't house hack at the very least. Everybody should at least do that. And I mean, like house hacking can even, to me, just be to buy a fixer upper,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Question number 2, how do you see young professionals adding the most value to experienced operators in this space?
Well, yeah, I guess it's just depends on what you want to do. I mean, you might offer a fresh perspective about where young people want to live. But if you want to get into the business, then I think most young people are savvy with the computer, with spreadsheets, with social media. So if you want to be involved in the business, I think you could do anything like that. If you think you're good with numbers, good with spreadsheets, and you can help with the underwriting process and underwrite some deals and maybe, add some value by finding deals like that. Or like I said, I'm terrible with social media. I'm like the upper end of the millennials, and I, grew up kind of hillbilly, so I was late to the cell phones, all that stuff. But so yeah, somebody that's more of a millennial than I am could add value to me, on the social media side. I don't like it. I'm not good at it. So yeah, I think most millennials are. So that's something that I can't afford it right now, but I wouldn't mind adding to my team somebody that actually was good at that. I mean, I know Instagram's big now. I do nothing, never been on Instagram. So I think that's something, a lot of millennials are naturally good at. To them, that probably wouldn't even feel like work. So yeah, that might be a good way to add value to somebody if you wanted to actually get involved in the business.
Yeah, once you've seen the power of social media, there's no going back.
I know, but I'm still like wading slowly into it.
Yeah.
I'm having to be pulled in.
So question number 3 is, what's the biggest mistake you've made in your career, and how have you since adjusted your business?
Yeah, I talked a little bit about the flip and just underestimating how much time that would take and how much a job it would be. For me personally, like I said, I'm a Christian, and I feel like my wife and I need to be more on the same page and working together and feeling like we're in it together and led by God in a certain direction. I felt like I really pushed into that on my own because I just couldn't wait for God's timing. I needed to push and make it my timing. So probably just kind of pushed my way in there. One thing I will say about the multifamily that was a good lesson for me and would be a good lesson for anybody looking to get into that. I ended up spending a lot more money, a lot more of our capital on existing tenants that didn't leave, right? So because there was so much deferred maintenance, I just never imagined we would spend thousands of dollars on tenants that were at the property, that we inherited, that were happy with what we did to the common areas, didn't want to leave. And we did not rehab their units, but like we replaced water heaters. We fixed leaking. I mean, there's one girl that didn't have her vanity sink hadn't worked in 4 years. She didn't have water, like a sink in her bathroom. And we got in there and she's like, could you fix this? I'm like, how long has it been like this? So, obviously we fixed that right away. Like, we want to run a different kind of property, but, so we spent at that 16 unit, we spent thousands and thousands of dollars on current, I'll say happy tenants. They were happy with us and happy to continue living there. But like we're going in, a guy had a hole in his ceiling that had been leaking for 8 years. And he just left the hole because he's like, why would I fix the hole when it leaks every time it rains really hard? And it was not only fixing that, but we ended up we put a whole new roof on And actually, that was a good story. The sellers actually paid for that for us. But then we found out it was actually the chimney. So, fixed his ceiling and all that, but then we had to fix the chimney. So the deferred maintenance of the units that we didn't even turn really was a surprise, and it was something I did not calculate enough for that.
That is definitely a good story.
Yeah.
Question number 4, what's been your favorite way to incorporate technology and social media into your business?
Yeah, well, still learning there. But yeah, it's really just connecting with people. I do enjoy putting the content that I create out on social media and just kind of hearing from people. It is fun for me because I really do believe in multifamily investing. I really believe it's a great way to create wealth. Threefold, just real quickly, my wife and I kind of came up with that where it's us, as part of the threefold strand, partnering with investors and partnering with God to create a life for us, but also for our investors, that it's a life that people would enjoy and not just a life that does well financially. And I believe real estate can do that. So I just kind of don't like when guys say, well, I'm doing this, but I'm working more than ever or whatever. Well, if that's the goal, okay, but I actually am trying to not work more than ever. I mean, the goal for me actually is to not work a ton. I mean, I know it's kind of a bragging right among a lot of guys, and I do really enjoy working, and I can get consumed by it. But the goal is to not have that. So I enjoy putting content out there and trying to show people a different way where you can create good wealth. I don't think people should try to be poor. I think people should try to be wealthy. I mean, I believe everybody should try to be wealthy. You can do a lot with your wealth. You can do a lot for others. So I do want to encourage people to be financially savvy and become wealthy, but don't give your life away while you do it. Don't become a slave to a job, especially if you don't enjoy it. But even if you do enjoy it, you're missing your kids' lives. You might be, ruining your relationship with your wife. And so I want people to have it all. I mean, and I think multifamily can do that to a degree. I mean, it's hard. It takes a while to get going. It does take work. There might be, some time where you are working more because you're, doing your full-time job and trying to get into it like I was. But yeah, I mean, we are in a position right now where multifamily has definitely allowed us to work a lot less than other people do. And we work a lot around the house, but we're doing that together, and we're doing that with the kids. We burn firewood all winter long. That's a lot of work, but I do that with my kids, make them stack it. That's a lot different than me being at the office, right? So I like to work, but I want to be home with my family, and I think multifamily can do that. So such a long way to answer your question, but I really enjoy putting that message out on social media and people seeing that. And a lot of people are attracted to that and say, oh, okay, maybe I'm not going to get into it full time, but maybe I've worked really hard and I've saved up some capital. So maybe if you take that, you can grow that for me, and maybe I don't have to work quite so hard and I can spend more time with my family.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. Love that vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last question is, what book has been most influential to you along your journey?
Yeah, well, if you don't understand real estate investing and you're kind of like, this seems so weird. The only thing I understand is just get a job, climb the corporate ladder, try to save up a couple $1 million for retirement. Then I would definitely say read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think that just does such a good job of just opens people's eyes. Oh my gosh, there's this whole different way to do life. I mean, it's really odd. So I would start there, but I really think I didn't even actually read the 10X by Grant Cardone, right? Not really a fan, but I think to me, to be a successful investor, you have to have the 10X rule, and then you have to have the compound effect by Darren Hardy. I think that's a really good book because to me, if you can't grasp the 10X, then you'll never believe that you can own 100 units or 1,000 units. So you've got to kind of get that. So if you're a person that has trouble thinking big, I mean, I guess I would suggest reading that. Like I said, I didn't even read it because for me, that's easy. I've got that part. I can think big. What's hard for me is the compound effect. And what Darren Hardy does a great job of in that book is explain that it's actually all these little things that you do that really don't feel like you're moving the needle, and you do them for a year, and then all of a sudden you hit that exponential growth where boom, you take off. And that's building your list, right? Underwriting a bunch of deals, talking to brokers, you're getting on bigger pockets, meeting people through there, going to networking events, doing all these things that build up your strengths in these areas, build up, the investors ready to go. And then eventually after a year, you buy a 40 unit property. And because you bought that 40 unit property, you've shown people that you can close on a big deal. And that same broker goes, hey, I got a 75 unit over here. And now all of a sudden you went from 0, to 115 units or whatever, and you're on your way. But it's because you did all these little things over time and you had a vision of buying big stuff. So you've got that 10X vision, but you understand that it's actually the compound effect that's going to get you there.
Yeah, it's not linear like having a job where
right.
Yeah. Having 100%. A job, your savings is like slowly going up. It's very predictable. This is like ups and downs, and then all of a sudden just like skyrockets.
Right.
Awesome. I love that answer. All right. Well, Lee, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials and Multifamily Podcast. What would be the best way for any of our listeners to reach out and get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned my podcast that I do, similar to your guys's, not specifically for millennials, but definitely for millennials. I am one. So I think I talk that way or whatever. But it's for anybody that's interested in, like I said, just, we cover faith, family, real estate. So kind of more of a wholesome approach of like, what's your life going to look like? How can it affect other areas of your life, but doing it through real estate. So real estate is the focus. So check out Threefold Real Estate Investing Podcast. And then check me out at threefoldrei.com. That's the website. You can sign up through there, get a hold of me. My email is pretty easy. It's info@threefoldrei.com. So yeah, any of those ways. Heck, my phone number is 937-407-0238. Don't mind people calling me. I love talking real estate. So yeah, any of those avenues, reach out to me. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. So far, I don't have any other social media, but I got those too. So you can find me on there at Lee Yoder.
All right. Well, Lee, thank you so much once again.
Thank you for listening to the Millennials in Multifamily Podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and a written review at iTunes so that we can connect with more people. Finally, head on over to kronosinvestmentpartners.com and sign up for our newsletter so you can stay updated on everything we're doing. If you're interested in partnering with us as we find new opportunities, you can also schedule a phone call with us under the Contact Us tab at kronosinvestmentpartners.com.